My name's Pat Herdsman. I'm a internal auditor for the Human Resources Department at the Board of Shepherding and Livestock. Here outside of Bethlehem, chat with a few shepherds about a disturbance they may have seen. So,
look, I'll tell you the same thing I told the last two guys that came out here. There was the brightest light you've ever seen, the loudest freaking trumpet you've ever heard. John nearly peed himself.
I nearly peed myself.
Good morning, y'all. It's always just funny coming up after stuff like that. Good to see you guys. If you're new here, my name is John Wagler, and I'm part of the team here, and just an honor to have you guys with us on this Sunday, which is a big Sunday because we get to share how much came in on the share offering, which I've been really excited about. As I told you last week, I'm not good at hiding surprises, and so this feels good for me to get this out, and so I want to do that right off the bat. If you weren't here for the share offering, here's what we do. It's our above and beyond giving that we want to do, where we take all the money that comes in that Sunday, and then we give it away to some organizations that we partner with. And those organizations, their reach represents several thousand people throughout Richmond. And so when we're able to partner with them financially or volunteering with them, whatever it is, that we become part of that story as well and impacting the city. And so we're really excited to be a part of that. And so here is the amount. We're going to build it up a little bit, slide by slide or number by number. And so can you guys give me a drum roll on your laps? It'll be, yes. Here we go. All right, let's do it. Keep it going. Here we go. Almost there. There it is. All right. So $119,807 came in that week to give away, and so we'll start giving checks to those organizations this upcoming week, and so it's really exciting to do that. You know what else is really cool is every year that we've done this, the percentage keeps continuing to grow, and I get it. We're also larger each year too, but that's about almost a 40% increase from what we gave away last year, and so it's really exciting to be a part of that. And that's why even when we talk about giving in general, like why we want everyone to be regular givers here and to do that, because we're able to do more of this stuff on a regular basis. And so it's awesome. So thank you guys so much for your hearts, and I want to impact the city. It's just an honor to do this with all of you. All right, so we're in week 2 of this Can I Get a Witness series. And the reason we're doing this series is because the shepherds in the story, in the Christmas story, is who we want to resonate with this Christmas season. In Luke chapter 2, I was really drawn to, as I was reading it, how it describes that when the shepherds encountered Jesus, something changed in them so much so that they had to tell everyone about it. And that when people who just knew the shepherds but didn't know Jesus, when they experienced the shepherds, they were astonished. That's what the Bible says, that they were astonished by what they experienced. They were astonished by what they saw. And so that those people, so the shepherds that saw Jesus, something transformed them so much so that they had to tell everybody. They had to be a witness to what they saw. And then there's something changed. There's something so different inside of them that the people looking at them were just astonished at what they heard. And I started thinking to myself, do people say that about Christians? I mean, they say a lot of things about Christians, but do they say, man, I love what I'm seeing there. It's crazy the change that happened. I'm astonished by what I see in you and what I'm hearing from you. And that we should want that to be a part of our story if we've experienced Jesus. Like if we call ourselves a Christian, and if you don't call yourself a Christian, that's okay. And that's why we do this, and we want to create space for you to be able to explore what that means. But if you do call yourself a Christian, then shouldn't people look at you and be like, huh, there's something so different about you. There's something so attractive about you. There's something so I'm just drawn in by what's going on inside of you because you've experienced Jesus. And so we want to be a witness to those things. The tagline for this entire series that you'll see every single week is simply this, that our lives bear witness to what we love the most. Our lives bear witness to what we love the most. All right, so that's the thing that's driving this whole series. And today I want to talk about something that we all need to have a day of reckoning with. That's fun, right? This is something that I think everyone can struggle with. Everyone deals with on a regular basis, and no one is above dealing with this at all, and that is our words, the things that we say and how we say them and the content of our words. And so I don't know that I've ever met anyone that doesn't need work in this. Present company included. And so I think it's important for us to look at, in particular, what Jesus talked about with our words, but to see how that, we become a witness through our words. It's interesting, this guy did a linguistic study, and he talked about how for only 1 in 8 self-proclaimed Christians have more than 50 conversations of faith in a year. Think about that. 1 in 8 self-professed Christians, only one of those 8 has more than 50 conversations about faith in a year. Isn't that sad? You might be thinking oh, I can't remember the last time I had one. Or, oh, man, it's not really part of my regular language. But shouldn't it be? Something that's supposed to be so critical to who we are and our purpose and our identity, shouldn't that be what we're talking about more often than not? And listen, you could talk about sports, you could talk about nutrition, you could talk about work, you could talk about family, all those things are good things to talk about. But why isn't faith higher on the list? If you were to kind of think about, all right, in the last month, how many faith conversations have I had? Shouldn't we be able to be well, there's this person, right? I've had so many, it's hard to even think about how many I've had. But a lot of times you might be able to be well, there was Mike. and it should, and I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but it should kind of just grab at us a little bit that maybe that should happen more. If it's so important, that we should be talking about it more. And so it becomes critical because words are so important. It makes me so mad, y'all, when I hear people say things like, it's just words, it's not that big of a deal. And we all know sticks and stones, maybe words would never hurt me, but that's a lie. Right? We know that. Words always can hurt. And how many of you guys can remember something hurtful someone said to you? Yeah, it's so easy to do that. Words matter. I remember hearing someone recently say that Hitler divided the world and brought everyone to war with the use of a microphone. And get this, Germany was the most Christian nation in the world at that point. And look what happened. How? Words. He was able to manipulate and convince people to believe certain things. Words matter. All right, and so, and listen, it matters for our leaders. It matters for business leaders. It matters for you and your home. It matters with you and your friends. It matters. Words deeply matter. And so as I was thinking about this, there were a couple of questions I started even thinking about to myself that as I was preparing the content. And I just wanted to share these with you because this is what I was just kind of sitting with this week. I said this, I said, how do the words that come out of my mouth bear witness to the love of Jesus? So I just started thinking about that for a little while and was jotting down some notes and just thinking about that. And then the second question I asked myself was this. If people judged me by my words, who would they say I love? If people judge me by my words, who would they say I love? And I just started thinking about that because I was like, man, if I wanted to do an assessment of my words, there's some things I'm proud of and some things I'm not. And so, but it speaks to what's actually going on in my heart. It speaks to what I, actually love the most. And then I wrote this down too. I said, what people think of the words that I use shapes what they think of the Jesus I say I love. So what people think about the words that I use shape what people will think about the Jesus that I say that I love. And so when you kind of think about a culture, you think about your own life and everything, when people think about what Christians say, like, what would they think about Jesus? And they're like, man, it's hard to believe the way you talk that you actually love Jesus. That's sad. And so our words deeply matter. I want to take a look at a passage in Matthew chapter 12 today when Jesus is talking to some religious folks and also some of his followers. And I want to take a look, and I've been really drawn to some of the harsher teachings of Jesus recently, just a heads up. And so, I know we love like the passages where Jesus is like, oh, I love grace, and I love forgiveness, and we love, hey, little children, come on over here. We love those. But sometimes Jesus like takes the gloves off a little bit, and it almost makes you feel like, hey, can we keep it above the belt? There's like some of those moments with Jesus that you're just like, all right, and this is one of those moments. So here's what he says in Matthew chapter 12. He says, a tree is identified by its fruit. If a tree is good, its fruit will be good. If a tree is bad, its fruit will be bad. Let me pause here. When Jesus starts talking like this, here's what he's saying to us. I'm going to allow you guys some tangible evidence to what's really happening in people. When you look around a friend or a leader or whatever, and if all you see is just bad people or bad scenarios or evil things happening or whatever it is, it's just like bad stuff around that person. And even coming out of that person is just like, man, I haven't seen anything good come out of your mouth or in your life or whatever. What Jesus is saying is like, you kind of know what's going on inside. There's tangible evidence. It doesn't mean we go around judging people, but there becomes tangible evidence to what's actually happening inside of people by the fruit that you produce. And that fruit can be with your words or your actions. And so Jesus is like, you can see it. Is it good fruit or is it bad fruit? And he's setting us up a little bit here because he's like, we like to think like, man, we can never know what's really going on. Or someone's like, how are you doing? Like, I don't know. And Jesus is like, no, you can know. You can. Like, here it is. It's very tangible. And so he's setting us up there because he's like, I'm gonna get a little more aggressive here in a second because he was pulling this in. And so he says this to the people. He says, you brood of snakes. I'm gonna pause here too. I promise we'll get through this. You brood of snakes. So in Jewish culture, the family lineage was everything. And so your lineage determined, and this is why even in the Bible you would see like they put down like generations of things. And so the reason was because your lineage meant where you could eat and who you could eat with. It mattered who talked first in a conversation. It mattered what job you could have. It mattered whether you'd be rich or poor. It mattered what jobs you could even have a possibility of getting, who would get inheritance and stuff like that. So your lineage just mattered in so much. So it was an honor and shame kind of culture. And the shame part of it was if you didn't have that lineage, you were guaranteed to be poor. You were guaranteed not to have any privileges. You were guaranteed to be enslaved. You were guaranteed to be demeaned for who you were. And so this whole kind of generational thing started happening. And honestly, like this has been part of like world history, hasn't it? It's been a part of American history. When you look at American history, it was racial in the sense of like, if you were white in this country, you got certain privileges, and still to this day get certain privileges. And we reap consequences of those things in our country. And so it created generational issues. In the same way it happened back then, it was generational impact. And so even when Jesus is teaching, he's saying like, listen, this spreads through generations. Like a lot of times we think, oh, we're past something. I'm like, no. You got to realize the generational impact that things have. Sure, we might take steps in the right direction, but there are generational impact that comes. And so Jesus is trying to get them to understand that. He's like, I'm describing you guys as a brood of snakes to saying this. You are the children of evil. You're like illegitimate children. It's so harsh of language that one translator actually said that it would be the equivalent to Jesus calling people an SOB. Like that's how like harsh the language was. And so he's telling them this because he wants them to see like what you're doing, how you're talking, how you're living is having generational impact. And so he continues on and he says, how could evil men like you speak what is good and right? For whatever is in your heart determines what you say. A good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart, and an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. And I tell you this, you must give an account on Judgment Day for every idle word you speak. The words you say will either acquit you or condemn you. I mean, I'm shocked there wasn't an amen. It's harsh. It's aggressive. So think about this. Your words, Jesus says, will acquit or condemn you. Your words matter. Your words have generational impact. Your words are shaping what people think about Jesus, are shaping so many different things. Your words matter, and they reveal what's going on in your heart. And so what can we take from this? I think there are two really important things. And the first thing is this, and it's a question. It's, do you care about the truth? Do you care about the truth? In Proverbs 12:22, it says this, that the Lord detests lying lips. And the word detest there means rejected or makes him sick, like this idea of vomiting. It also means, it's the same word used for abomination. And you guys have probably heard that word used if you've been around church or whatever, and it's been used for other things throughout the Old Testament in particular. And the word, like someone might say, well, that's an abomination to the Lord. Well, this is what this says, that lying is an abomination to the Lord. That he rejects it. He wants to spit it out. He wants to vomit it. It makes him sick. And then it says that, but he takes pleasure in those who tell the truth. And so when we think about lying, it's like an interesting thing, right? How many guys have lied? Yeah. Bunch of liars in here, right? But how often do we justify our lying? How often do we say, that's not that big of a deal? How often do we manipulate things in such a way? See, this is why our words matter so much. They shape culture. They shape our life. They shape perception and perspective. I even think, obviously Facebook wasn't around back then. I even think that when we get to heaven, Jesus would be like, hey, remember when you liked that? And so we've got to understand that this idea of what is truth and how often am I lying? What's happening inside of me? And so why do we lie? I think there are some reasons. I wrote down 5 of them. So the first one is this, that we are unaware. We are unaware. Malcolm Gladwell has this great podcast called Revisionist History. And in one of the episodes, he talks about this guy. I don't know if you remember, him. Brian Williams. All right, so Brian Williams, on March 26th of 2013, had a really unfortunate thing happen to him. He was on late night TV and he started telling this story about how he was in Iraq and in this helicopter that got shot down, and they were trying to get people out and deliver supplies and stuff like that, but they landed safely and everything was okay. And the story was technically true. However, he was not in the helicopter. And so the pilot of the helicopter heard the story, and what ended up happening was he called in and was just like, hey, Brian Williams wasn't there. He was there about an hour after we landed safely. All right, so then everything, it's like, well, when has he told the truth? Where else has he been lying in other places too, and all of that? And so he loses his job and everything else, and it became known as you couldn't trust anything Brian Williams said. Now, there is also a possibility he was unaware, and here's why, that he was lying. He told that story several other times before that point and never included the fact that he was in the helicopter. And so how many guys have ever told a story where you kept telling the story so many times, you kept adding details, and all of a sudden you're like, and I was... And you realize, actually, I really wasn't there, but it just felt like I was. He just happened to do that on national TV in front of millions of people. And so I think that there's, now how do you get to that point? Well, obviously you don't just do that naturally. There's something inside of us that says, I'm going to manipulate this, I'm going to change this little detail, I'm going to do this, and all of a sudden you kind of move into this lie, but you had been previously little lies before that to try and maybe embellish a story or of some kind. And they've done studies on this stuff, like they're called flashbulb incidents, and what they do, at 9/11, they studied 3,500 people. They'd seen this stuff happen before, and so these guys did some research, and immediately after 9/11 happened, they sat down with 3,500 people and asked them three questions. Where were you? What were you feeling? And what were you doing? All right, and so they described all of those things, and then they went back to them 3 days later, and what they found that most of the people out of those 3,500 had changed one element of the story already. And then they went back a year later and a couple years later, and every single time they would change certain aspects of the story. But then when they were told what they told the first time they were asked, their confidence in what they said later never changed. It's like, oh, clearly I wasn't right the first time. And so what is that showing us? It just shows that like our memories can get a little off and we can kind of open ourselves up to some little mishandling of the truth because maybe we're embellishing or maybe there's something emotional that happens and like distorts the truth or whatever. But we also have these things where we tell these stories or we do these things and we just become unaware of the fact that we're lying about something. The second thing I think that can be a reason why we're lying is because we're lazy. We would rather take the easy way out and lie rather than tell the truth. Here's like an easy analogy. You're at your grandmother's house for your birthday, and you hate blueberries, but she presents you with a blueberry pie. And so she sits it down in front of you, and it actually makes you gag, but you look at your grandmother and you say, this is the best pie I've ever had, right? And she's like, oh my gosh, that's so great. I was hoping you would love it. And then you're like, oh, I couldn't lie to grandma. But then your birthday comes around next year. And she comes back and she goes, here's your favorite blueberry pie. And you're just like, ah, this is my favorite, Grandma. You know what I mean? And so how many guys have done something like this? Don't lie. How many of you guys have done, right. We've done stuff like this. What is that? That's not a laziness. Like, isn't there a way to be honest with Grandma in that scenario rather than gagging for the next 37 years of your life? Like, there's a way to tell her the truth. But we get too lazy in our conversations to actually engage it. I think a third thing, reason why we lie is it's habit. It's a habit. And so then we end up justifying this habit. Honestly, right now, I think we basically consider lying leadership. We vote people in that lie all the time. And we're just like, well, everybody lies. And we allow things going. And it's easy just to look at political leaders and say that, but we do it in business, we do it in our own family relationships, we do it with friendships, and it becomes a habit. We feel comfortable lying. It gets so bad that sometimes it's such a habit that we don't even realize, we don't even understand like what's true and what's not in our life. But it becomes just a habit and acceptable, and that's not okay. That's not okay. I can't tell you how many times I've sat with people in counseling sessions, in particular with couples, and inevitably, someone's lied and it's caused disruption. If I went around and just started talking to you guys and I said, hey, tell me a time where you've been lied to, and you could have something, and I would say, was that hurtful or helpful? You're not going to be like, you know what's really great about that? Lying always hurts. Lying always creates a disconnect. Lying in every relationship moves you from trust to suspicion. It happens every time. When we tell our kids, what's the worst thing that you can do? And I was like, the worst thing that you can do is lie to us. Here's why. When you break that trust, it's so hard to get that back. You create this culture within a relationship when you lie, it becomes built on things that it's like, there's no foundation to it. I think the fourth thing that happens is insecurity. Insecurity. We lie when we're insecure about something, and then here's the thing about lying. You always need a buddy to that lie to cover up the lie you just had. And so one lie never sits on its own. One lie creates another lie, creates another lie, creates another lie. The fifth thing is it's a heart issue. It's a heart issue. And that's what Jesus is really getting at, that every time, this is why I say this is why I'm saying it's tangible. Like every time that we lie, so when those words come out of our mouth, like where we manipulate the truth or whatever, we tell our little white lies, right? When you tell white lies, you're still a what? Liar, right? So when those words come out of our mouth, the fruit aspect, what immediately we should be thinking is like, ooh, what's going on in my heart? Why do I need to do that? I'm not saying you're not a Christian, I'm not saying anything, but why do I need to do that? There's something here that God needs to do something with. And that's for all of us. I wrote this down. I said, the more comfortable we get telling lies, the more complicated and dangerous our lives become. The more comfortable we get telling lies, the more complicated and dangerous our lives become. Because it's got to be built on another lie, and another lie, and another lie, and another lie. Jesus says it this way in John 8:44. And he's talking about lying. He says, for you are the children of your father, the devil, and you love to do evil things he does. He was a murderer from the beginning. He has always hated the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, it is consistent with his character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. So what Jesus is saying is that when we lie, we are more like Satan than we are like Christ. Merry Christmas. And so you can get mad at Jesus, not me, with that. But can you imagine if that's how we thought? Hey, I'm about to say something that's really Satan-like. It'd probably shift how we talk a little bit, right? The other thing I think we got to pay attention to is our tone. Do you care about your tone? In Luke 4:22, it says this, everyone spoke well of him, meaning of Jesus. Another translation says this, that everyone witnessed about him and was amazed by the gracious words, meaning they were attracted to the things he was saying that came from his lips. How can this be? They asked, isn't this Joseph's son? When I read this, I thought to myself, that's what I want. Like, I want people, when they're around me, to be attracted with the graciousness of my tone, with the wisdom that comes from my mouth, because that's what's in my heart. But here's just the reality. Like, I can lean sarcastic sometimes. Well, I mean, more than sometimes. But, like, I can lean that way in my life. In conflict, I can be more the litigator kind of type. And I can push buttons. I can know what line to say. I can do those things. I know that can be in my heart to do. There are times where I've had to apologize to my kids for tone or something that I've said. There's times where I've had to apologize to Lacey or to the staff or whatever. Not that it's like all the time. It's rare, but I still see in those moments that, man, there's still stuff in my heart that God needs to continue to work on. And maybe you can think of that way too. Like maybe in your tone with your child, would your kid say you're gracious in your tone? Would your kid say, like even in conflict, it just feels like this is like a Jesus-like moment? Or does your tone say something else? To your friends or to your spouse or to your coworkers, the people you lead, what does your tone speak of you in those moments? When you are sitting with friends thinking about someone that you disagree with, whether that's politically or in life or whatever, does your tone say, you know what, this is really gracious, that's what's coming out of my mouth? Does your tone, when you're gossiping about someone, does your tone say, you know what, this is so gracious. My gossip is so joyful and so kind to people. When we think about the fruit of the Spirit, it doesn't say like love, joy, peace, lying, gossip, manipulating. Have you ever thought about the fact that with our tone and our actions and our words that if people say, I've heard someone say this one time, like, I don't know why, they just love sharing things with me about other people. I'm like, you mean they love gossiping to you about other people? What does that say about you? Our words matter. Our tone matters. Do you know in your tone, if you're in conflict with somebody else, if you create safety in conversation, you have, and within the first 30 seconds, you have a 97% higher chance of being heard yourself. How do you do that? Tone. How you really care about what the other person's saying and talking about. I think a valuable question that we can ask ourselves at the end of this is, what do I want to have happen at the end of this conversation? So in whatever scenario you're in, what if that was the question we asked? Do you think your tone would change a little bit? As a parent, as a friend, as a husband, as a wife, as a boss, as a coworker? Do you think your tone would change if in the end you're like, all right, what do I want to have happen at the end of this conversation? All right, I want them to, let's just say you're at work, I want them to know how much I care for the job that they're doing. I want them to know how much that they care, that I care for them as like someone that I lead. And I want them to learn and grow from this. Do you think you would be aggressive in your tone, or would you take another route? If you're with your child and sitting there, I want, at the end of this conversation with my kid, I want them to know that I love them, that I care, and I want what's best for them. And I do want them to honor and respect the rules of this house, but I also want them to grow and empower them and get them to understand why this is so important. Do you think your tone would change in how you talk to your child? Our tone matters. Our words matter. And here's how I want to end this. I want us to all, we'll take like 30 seconds or 45 seconds, and I just want you to think about your words over the past couple of weeks. All right? And we'll all bow our heads in just a minute. And here's what I want you to think about. What are the moments where my words sounded a lot more like Satan than Jesus? I know, we don't want to think that way. They're just going to make you do it. Because I want you to think it and like verbalize it and feel it, because that's what Jesus taught. And so I want you to think, okay, what are the areas then of my heart that just need some work? We all got work. We all have work to do in this. All right. So listen. Take courage in this, that everyone in this room right now has work to do. Everybody. So you're not alone in this. All right, so bow your heads. We'll just take a minute of silence, and I'll close this out in prayer. So God, as we are processing the areas of our life where we know we need some help, the areas of our hearts that we know that need to be either tweaked or completely overhauled, those conversations that we've had with friends at work or within the context of our family, those conversations that we know don't sound like you, those conversations that honestly make us feel a little uncomfortable that we could be held accountable for those words. God, I pray that first that we would understand your grace and forgiveness. And as we sang before, that you're our living hope, that in those darker areas of things where we're maybe not producing the best fruit, that your light can shine into that and have such incredible impact. I pray that we would be open to receiving that and choosing that in you and allowing you to reshape that part of our heart. Second thing I want to pray for, God, is against cynicism. It's easy to get there. God, we know that being cynical sucks the life out of culture and out of conversation and out of relationships. And so I want to pray against anyone who's just been, and they just know they're just going to go cynical first, because that's not what you want in our hearts, because then we know what comes out of our mouths. And third, God, I just want to pray for those that, you know what, you've taken good steps. You're not where you want to be yet, but you've taken some good steps, and to just feel encouraged by that and strengthened by that, and to challenge to continue to grow. God, we know our words matter, and they shape culture, they shape self-esteem, they shape relationships, and we all need to be sensitive enough and willing enough to see the fruit of our words, whether it's good or bad. And that becomes a recognition and a realization of what's actually in our hearts. And so, God, I pray for pure hearts and pure minds and pure words and encouraging words and life-giving words that will start to come out of us, and to watch marriages change and families change and friendships change and workplace change, because we want to be life-giving with our words rather than destroying people around us. We give this to you in your name, we pray. Everyone said, amen. Hey, before you get out of here, two quick things. First, I just want to say a personal thank you to, I'm not going to name everybody, but to all of you guys who participated with the float yesterday for the Christmas parade. It was just so great. And on many, many levels, from the costumes and the people that put in hard work there, to the dancing and the choreography, and the people that were marshals and served as parking lot attendants and all that stuff. Like, you helped make that day great. And it was awesome. And we got so much incredible feedback from the float and how great it was. And it's just thank you for being a part of that and hanging out. So good job. Good job. And the second and last thing is this: like, if you want to talk to someone about taking a next step in your faith and what that looks like and connecting with people, whether that's for the first time or just what to do next, or if you want to connect here at Hill City and learn what it means and what we're about, stop by the What's Next Lounge on your way out, and there are people there waiting to talk to you. You guys have a great rest of your Sunday, and we will see you next week.